The West Sea at 2:44 p.m. was 44 meters deep. That number mattered because 44 meters was not deep water. It was shallow water, the specific kind of shallow that acoustic operators called difficult, and that the Yellow Sea's unique bottom composition, silty and irregular, made worse. Sound propagated erratically in the West Sea. A contact could be at 800 yards, and its bearing could be off by 15 degrees. A contact could be at 400 yards and appear on the display as two separate contacts because the reflected signal from the bottom was arriving at a different angle than the direct path signal. The West Sea at 44 meters average depth was an acoustic environment that required the specific patience of operators who had been trained not to trust their first interpretation of a signal, but to track it across multiple updates before characterizing it as anything at all. The U.S. destroyer was on patrol station 9.3 nautical miles south of the northern limit line. The afternoon watch had been quiet for 2 hours and 17 minutes. At 2:44 p.m., the sonar operator reported an acoustic contact, bridge CIC. Sonar contact bearing 018, range estimate 3.4 to 4 nautical miles. Bearing confidence medium, range confidence low due to bottom conditions. Contact is faint, consistent with diesel-electric drive at low power. I am tracking. Classification pending. This is a possible submerged contact not yet confirmed. Track designation, Sierra 1. Possible submerged contact. Faint. Diesel-electric at low power. Not confirmed. The officer of the deck acknowledged and noted the contact in the log. He was also looking at the surface picture, which had been normal for the past 2 hours and 17 minutes. A standard West Sea afternoon with the expected distribution of small fishing returns at the northern edge of the patrol sector, the ROK Navy corvette at its eastern patrol station 4.2 nautical miles away, and the background of commercial and fishing traffic that populated the West Sea on any workday afternoon. At 2:46 p.m., the surface picture changed. 41 contacts appeared on the radar over the space of approximately 3 minutes, emerging from the northern sector, from bearings consistent with the area north of the NLL, drifting south across the line and into the southern patrol sector. Not as rapidly as the 83 vessel event in the fog. Steadily, contact by contact, over 3 minutes, building to a distribution of 41 vessels spread across the northern portion of the Western Channel patrol box at ranges between 3.8 and 6.2 nautical miles. The officer of the deck was looking at two things simultaneously. The sonar display showing Sierra 1 at bearing 018 with faint and intermittent signal, and the radar display showing 41 new surface contacts building across the northern sector. He had the specific quality of attention of a watch officer who recognized that both things were happening at the same time and that this was not coincidental. He pressed the intercom. At 2:47 p.m., the captain stepped onto the bridge. He looked at the sonar display first. Sierra 1. Bearing 018, range estimate 3.4 to 4 nautical miles, diesel-electric, faint, tracking for 3 minutes. Then, the radar display. 41 surface contacts, northern sector, ranges 3.8 to 6.2 nautical miles, distribution consistent with a fishing fleet crossing south from the NLL direction. He stood at the center console for 15 seconds. I have the con. He did not yet activate the fire control radar. He did not authorize the Seahawk. He was reading the picture with the specific attention of someone identifying a tactical problem before acting on it, because the problem he was looking at had 2 dimensions, and the 2 dimensions were not independent of each other. The acoustic contact Sierra 1 was at bearing 018, range estimate 3.4 to 4 nautical miles. If it was a submarine, it was north of the patrol station, but south of the NLL, in the same waters as the 41 surface fishing contacts that were distributing across the northern patrol sector. The surface contacts were real and present and documented. The acoustic contact was possible but unclassified and tracked through shallow water acoustics with known bearing and range error. The surface fleet was the acoustic environment of the acoustic contact. The 41 surface contacts, each with propellers, each with engine noise, each contributing to the acoustic background of the West Sea at 2:47 p.m., were producing the specific kind of surface acoustic interference that made passive sonar in shallow water significantly more difficult. The acoustic environment had gotten harder at the same time as the acoustic contact had appeared. That was either coincidence or it was not. He turned to the CIC intercom. "Give me Sierra 1's full tracking history, bearing updates, signal strength, frequency characteristics. Also give me the ROK Navy corvette status. Is Bravo 3 on the coordination circuit?" The CIC watch officer reported in 2 stages. Sierra 1 had been tracked for 6 minutes with 4 bearing updates, showing a slow change from 018 to 020 over the 6-minute period, consistent with a contact bearing northwest, moving north-northwest at very slow speed or near stationary with drift. Signal strength was faint but consistent, not a biologics contact, not a current artifact. The frequency characteristics were consistent with a diesel-electric submarine at minimal power or snorkeling at low RPM. The ROK Corvette Bravo 3 was on the coordination circuit and had been since the watch began. At 2:48 p.m., the captain opened the coordination circuit. He had one question, and the answer to that question determined his entire tactical approach to the next hour. "Bravo 3, U.S. destroyer. Do you have any ROK Navy subsurface assets in our patrol area today?" Over. The ROK commanding officer's response came after a pause of approximately 7 seconds. A pause that was long enough to consult a classified asset position document, but short enough to indicate the question had been anticipated or the information was readily available. U.S. destroyer Bravo 3. We have one ROK Navy diesel-electric submarine in the broader patrol area, operating under our National Command Authority. Its exact position is not available to me on this circuit. I can confirm it is in the area. Over. One ROK Navy submarine in the area. The captain absorbed this information and its tactical implications simultaneously. There was a ROK Navy submarine operating under Korean National Command Authority in the patrol area. He did not know its exact position. He had a sonar contact designated Sierra 1 at bearing 018, range estimate 3.4 to 4 nautical miles, that was faint and consistent with diesel-electric propulsion at low power. The sonar contact might be the ROK submarine. The sonar contact might be a North Korean submarine. The sonar contact might be a thermal layer artifact, a biologics return misclassified in the shallow water acoustic environment, or any of several other non-vessel sources that the West Sea reliably produced. The sonar contact was unclassified. The primary tool for classifying a submerged contact in shallow water was active sonar, a transmitted acoustic pulse that would produce a return from a submarine's hull and allow classification by the shape and character of the return. Active sonar in this specific scenario had a specific cost. If Sierra 1 was the ROK submarine, active sonar would reveal the ROK submarine's position to every acoustic receiver in the West Sea, including any North Korean acoustic monitoring systems. Active sonar in these waters, with a potential friendly submarine in the area, could demask an allied asset. The captain would not use active sonar unless the tactical situation required it as a last resort. CPA to Sierra 1, undetermined. The contact was not tracking with sufficient precision to establish a confident CPA projection. The bearing was changing slowly. The range estimate had a 600-yard error band. In 44-meter water with 41 surface contacts adding to the acoustic background, Sierra 1 was a problem he was going to have to manage without the primary tool he would normally use to solve it. CPA to Sierra 1, undetermined. The contact was not tracking with sufficient precision to establish a confident CPA projection in 44-meter water. CPA to nearest surface contact, approximately 3.8 nautical miles. The fishing fleet was distributing but had not yet pushed south of the 3.8-mile mark. At 2:50 p.m., the LRAD activated, directed toward the northern surface contacts in Korean language, the same standard NLL crossing broadcast that had been used in the fog crossing encounter. All vessels that have crossed the northern limit line and are operating in the West Sea Patrol area. This is a United States Navy warship. You are operating south of the northern limit line. Return to your designated areas. This crossing is being documented and reported to Republic of Korea military authorities. The broadcast covered the surface dimension. The surface contacts were the visible, documented problem. They were also the acoustic environment problem. Every fishing boat that reversed course and returned north of the NLL was one fewer source of shallow water acoustic interference between the destroyer and Sierra 1. The ROK corvette transmitted its parallel broadcast on the Korean military frequency simultaneously, as it had in the fog crossing. At 2:52 p.m., the first friction event arrived. The sonar operator reported, "Bridge CIC. Sierra 1 bearing has shifted. I now have bearing 023, range estimate 3.2 to 3.8 nautical miles. The bearing shift of 3 degrees over 8 minutes is consistent with a contact bearing northwest, moving very slowly south or southwest. Signal strength is unchanged, still faint. I am noting that with the current surface contact density north of our position, the acoustic environment has degraded since 1446. Sierra 1's signal is consistent across the degradation, but I am losing discrimination confidence. I recommend we discuss active sonar option. Active sonar option. The sonar operator was flagging the same problem the captain had already identified. The shallow water plus 41 surface contacts was degrading his ability to track and characterize Sierra 1 passively. Active sonar would resolve Sierra 1, but at the cost of potentially revealing the ROK submarine, the captain acknowledged. He did not authorize active sonar. He turned to the CIC intercom. Sierra 1 bearing history. Is it consistent with northbound or southbound track? CIC. Best assessment, Sierra 1 is northbound or near stationary. The bearing drift from 018 to 023 over 8 minutes is consistent with a contact that is north of us and moving north-northwest, which would put the bearing increasing to our right as the contact moves further northeast of our position. This is not consistent with a southbound approach. If Sierra 1 was approaching south, the bearing would be decreasing to our left, not increasing to our right. Northbound or stationary. Not approaching. If Sierra 1 was the ROK submarine, a northbound track was consistent with a submarine that had been operating in the area and was moving north as the surface picture complicated its operational environment. If Sierra 1 was a North Korean submarine, northbound was a different scenario entirely. The bearing drift data was not sufficient for a definitive classification, but northbound was better than southbound. At 2:54 p.m., the surface picture began to respond to the LRAD broadcasts. 11 of the 41 contacts showed behavioral changes, the specific pattern of vessels slowing and beginning to reverse their southward drift. Not 11 reversals, but 11 contacts showing speed reduction or bearing change consistent with crews that had heard the combined U.S. ROK broadcasts and were responding. The remaining 30 contacts continued their southward drift. The surface contact count south of the NLL was now at 41 and holding, not increasing as it had been between 2:46 p.m. and 2:49 p.m. The broadcasts had stopped the accumulation. They had not yet reversed it. CPA to nearest surface contact. 3.6 nautical miles, 2 of the 41 contacts had pushed slightly further south. At 2:55 p.m., the ROK Corvette Bravo 3 transmitted on the coordination circuit. U.S. Destroyer Bravo 3. I am activating my own sonar, passive mode only, to attempt independent tracking of your Sierra 1 contact. I am not authorized to use active sonar without National Command Authority. I will share my bearing tracking data with you in real time on this circuit. Over. An independent second sonar. The ROK Corvette's sonar, from its position 4.2 nautical miles to the east, would provide a cross-bearing on Sierra 1 that, when combined with the destroyer's own bearing, would allow a triangulated range estimate far more precise than either vessel could provide alone. 2 bearing lines crossing produced a position fix. That position fix would determine whether Sierra 1 was north or south of the NLL, whether it was the ROK submarine, and whether it was moving in a manner consistent with the threat. No active sonar required. Bravo 3, U.S. Destroyer. Concur. Share your Sierra 1 bearing data as soon as you have it. We will cross-reference. Do not use active sonar. Over. At 2:57 p.m., the second friction event arrived. 2nd Fleet Command in Seoul had been monitoring the contact picture through the destroyer's real-time data link and had flagged the combination of the NLL surface crossing and the sonar contact for the watch officer. A priority message arrived on the satellite command channel. Seoul was aware of both contacts, was coordinating with ROK Navy Command Authority on the subsurface asset, and was requesting that the U.S. destroyer maintain passive sonar tracking only and avoid any active sonar activation pending ROK Navy Command Authority guidance. The message confirmed what the captain had already decided. Seoul had the picture. The guidance aligned with his approach. He acknowledged and resumed the tactical picture. At 2:58 p.m., Bravo 3 reported its first Sierra 1 bearing. U.S. destroyer, Bravo 3. I have a bearing on your Sierra 1 from our position, bearing 310, signal consistent with diesel-electric at low RPM. I am tracking. Over. Bearing 023 from the U.S. destroyer. Bearing 310 from the ROK corvette. 2 bearing lines. The intersection geometry was calculable. The CIC tactical officer ran the intersection calculation within 90 seconds. Bridge, CIC. Bearing intersection for Sierra 1. Approximate position 3.6 nautical miles north-northwest of our current position, 4.1 nautical miles northwest of Bravo 3. This position places Sierra 1 approximately 2.1 nautical miles south of the NLL. 2.1 nautical miles south of the NLL. Sierra 1 was south of the line, in the patrol box, in the same waters as the 41 vessel surface crossing. The position was within the area where the ROK submarine had been confirmed to be operating. The captain was at the center console. He had the bearing intersection position, the northbound or stationary track assessment, the shallow water acoustic confidence level, and the ROK commanding officer's confirmation that a ROK diesel-electric submarine was in the area. He had not used active sonar. He had not activated the Seahawk for surface documentation. The Seahawk had not yet launched because the sonar contact remained unclassified, and launching the Seahawk changed the destroyer's acoustic environment by adding rotor noise. At 3 p.m., the ROK Corvette Bravo 3 transmitted a second bearing update, and then, 40 seconds later, a different kind of message. U.S. destroyer, Bravo 3. I have received guidance from ROK Navy Command Authority. I am authorized to confirm. The submerged contact in the patrol area is a ROK Navy asset operating under our national authority. The contact is friendly. ROK Command Authority requests you continue passive sonar monitoring only and maintain your current patrol station. The asset will clear the patrol area within the next 30 to 40 minutes. Over. The contact is friendly. Sierra 1 was the ROK submarine. The captain had managed the acoustic dimension for 16 minutes without active sonar, without demasking the ROK asset, and had maintained the surface dimension response through LRAD broadcasts that were reversing the NLL crossing simultaneously. Both dimensions had been managed in parallel, each informing the other without either contaminating the other's tactical space. At 3:01 p.m., he authorized the Seahawk. Now that the acoustic dimension was resolved, Sierra 1 confirmed friendly active sonar not needed. The Seahawk could launch for surface documentation without the rotor noise affecting a sensitive acoustic track. The Seahawk launched at 3:02 p.m. and climbed to 400 feet, establishing a documentation orbit above the northern sector. The surface contact count was now down to 31, south of the NLL. 11 of the 41 had already reversed. The LRAD was broadcasting its second cycle. Bravo 3's parallel broadcast had continued throughout. At 3:04 p.m., the third LRAD broadcast was directed specifically at a cluster of 8 contacts that had pushed to 3.4 nautical miles, the nearest surface contacts of the entire fleet. Vessels bearing 045 to 055 from us, range 3.4 to 3.7 nautical miles. You are in close proximity to a United States naval vessel on authorized patrol. Return north of the northern limit line immediately. Your vessels and positions are being documented by aerial surveillance. Aerial surveillance named. The Seahawk at 400 feet was documented in the broadcast. The 8 contacts in the cluster began showing speed changes within 60 seconds. CPA to nearest surface contact, 3.2 nautical miles, the cluster still drifting slightly south. At 3:07 p.m., Bravo 3 reported the final Sierra 1 tracking data. U.S. destroyer Bravo 3. Sierra 1 is now bearing 029 from our position. The asset is tracking north. Bearing on your end? 026 from our position. The crossing bearing updated. Sierra 1 was now approximately 4.4 nautical miles from the destroyer and 4.8 from Bravo 3, bearing north. The ROK submarine was moving north, as the bearing drift had suggested throughout. Its northbound track was carrying it back toward the NLL and through it toward ROK submarine operating areas on the northern side. At 3:09 p.m., Sierra 1's signal faded below detection threshold on the destroyer's sonar. The contact had moved beyond passive sonar range in the degraded acoustic environment. Bravo 3 lost contact at 3:11 p.m. Sierra 1 was gone from the acoustic picture. The surface picture had changed dramatically in the same window. The ROK corvette's final count, 14 contacts south of the NLL, down from 41. 27 of the original 41 had reversed and were north of the line. The remaining 14 were slow to respond but were not advancing. They were holding position or drifting slightly north. The captain authorized a final LRAD broadcast at 3:12 p.m., third time directed specifically at the remaining 14 contacts. The standard NLL return advisory, combined with a specific notification that their positions were logged in the encounter record and would be included in reporting to UN Command. By 3:19 p.m., 9 of the remaining 14 had crossed north of the NLL. By 3:24 p.m., 4. By 3:28 p.m., the last contact in the patrol sector was 0.4 nautical miles north of the NLL and moving north. The Western Channel patrol box was clear. At 3:29 p.m., the ROK corvette confirmed on the coordination circuit. U.S. destroyer, Bravo 3. Our national asset has cleared the patrol area. ROK Command Authority thanks you for the passive-only approach. Your record-keeping and coordination were exemplary. Over. Your record-keeping and coordination were exemplary. The Japanese commanding officer in the Luzon Strait encounter had said "well done" in 2 words. The ROK commanding officer's 14 words contained the specific professional acknowledgement of a naval officer who had watched a coalition partner navigate a situation that required both tactical competence and the specific restraint of not using a tool that would have solved one problem by creating another. No one on the bridge spoke for a long moment. The sonar operator in the CIC completed the Sierra 1 contact log. 16 entries spanning the contact's first detection at 2:44 p.m. to the last detection at 3:09 p.m. Bearing drift from 018 to 026 over 25 minutes, consistent with a contact bearing north of the destroyer that was moving slowly north-northwest. Signal strength faint throughout, degraded by surface acoustic environment. Classification at contact closure, friendly, confirmed by ROK Navy Command Authority. Active sonar authorized, no. Active sonar used, no. The sonar operator had done his job for 16 contact entries without the primary tool for shallow water classification, in an environment where 41 surface contacts were adding to the acoustic background, with a range estimate that never improved beyond a 600-yard error band. He had provided bearing data that, when crossed with Bravo 3's bearing, had produced a useful position estimate. He had done what passive sonar in the West Sea at 44 meters required: patience and consistent tracking without jumping to conclusions. The helmsman had held the patrol station through 44 minutes of simultaneous surface and acoustic contact management, through 3 LRAD broadcast cycles, through the bearing intersection calculation, through the ROK confirmation, through the surface fleet reduction from 41 to 0 contacts south of the NLL. His standing order was to hold the patrol station waypoint. His hands had been providing the continuous minor inputs that 44-meter water in the West Sea current required to hold a position within 50 meters of the charted waypoint. The station had been held. The officer of the deck looked at the radar display. Empty northern sector. The ROK corvette at its eastern station. The background fishing contacts in the southern portion of the box. The NLL, invisible and intact, and at 3:29 p.m., honored. He straightened his collar. The captain walked to the chart table. The encounter report would go to 2nd Fleet Command Seoul, 7th Fleet, and UN Command Military Armistice Commission. The ROK Navy subsurface assets involvement would be reported through separate national command channels. The U.S. destroyer's report would note the presence of a ROK subsurface asset without identifying its position or track. The encounter record would document the passive-only approach and its rationale. Full encounter report to 2nd Fleet Seoul and 7th Fleet. Document the dual-dimension contact picture from 1444, the passive sonar tracking of Sierra 1, including all bearing updates, and the cross-bearing fix from Bravo 3 at 1457, the decision log on active sonar, why it was not authorized and what information was used instead, and the surface contact resolution timeline. Bravo 3 coordination, full log of the circuit exchange. UN Command MAC, surface crossing documentation, standard format. He looked at the chart. Resume standard patrol pattern. He looked at the patrol sector picture once more. Clear. Good watch. The record assembled here speaks in the language the ocean keeps. One acoustic contact, designated Sierra 1, was detected in the Western Channel Patrol area at 2:44 p.m., bearing 018, range estimate 3.4 to 4 nautical miles, consistent with a diesel-electric submarine at low power. Simultaneously, 41 surface contacts crossing south from the NLL direction began distributing across the northern patrol sector, degrading the acoustic environment. Active sonar not authorized. Active sonar not used. Rationale confirmed ROK Navy subsurface asset and patrol area. Active sonar would have demasted a friendly contact. Cross-bearing position fix, destroyer. Bearing 023, ROK Corvette Bravo, 3 bearing 310, triangulated position 3.6 nautical miles northwest of destroyer, 2.1 nautical miles south of NLL. Contact track assessment, northbound. Confirmed as ROK Navy asset by ROK Command Authority, yes, at 3:01 p.m. Sierra 1 cleared patrol area, 3:09 p.m. last detection. Surface contacts south of NLL at peak, 41. LRAD broadcasts 3 in Korean. ROK Corvette parallel broadcasts continuous. Surface contacts south of NLL at resolution 0. Bravo! 3 cross-bearing contribution, critical for range, fix without active sonar. Seoul 2nd Fleet Command guidance on passive only, confirmed received and aligned with captain's decision. Patrol station position changed during 44-minute dual-dimension encounter, less than 50 meters from charted waypoint. Weapons authorized, no. Weapons released, no. Active sonar, no. The West Sea at 44 meters depth punishes certainty and rewards patience. Sierra 1 was tracked for 25 minutes on bearing alone in a degraded acoustic environment by an operator who did not reach for the active ping, because the active ping would have cost more than the information it provided. The patrol box was cleared in both dimensions. The record has both.